Hello and welcome to the RPG Blender, where we give lesser played games and forgotten settings the roll of the dice they deserve. I'm here today diving back into Dark Souls, because apparently they've made some releases and I seem to be in this for the long haul. So let's talk about some of the newest topics that they've brought up on their blog, and we're going to dive as well into their Fireside Chat that they had last week. That's a lot to cover, and I do not want to make this a very long video. It's currently pretty late at night, my kid's asleep in the other half of the room, and I don't want to wake her up. So I'm on a very tight time limit. So let's go through these posts first. First up from last week, I believe it came up the day of or the day after I posted my last video, is character creation in Dark Souls. Here they give us a little bit of a glimpse into how they're going to be handling character creation. So we start off with an origin, a series of fragments from your past, as well as the motivation to keep you going as you're torn from restful death time and time again. Okay, so this is a character concept. This is going to be similar to what you saw as a background in Dungeons and Dragons. Makes sense there for them to use that equivalency. All right, that's fine. Nothing special there, except for the next sentence. Rather than rolling for attributes, you select one of 4 origins: the Brute, the Fencer, the Jack of all trades, and the Caster. These provide your base statistics as well as some other surprises. So basically what they're saying is we get 4 stat blocks to choose from. Instead of having a point-buy system where you can build out the stats that you want, like in regular Dungeons and Dragons, we're going to be given 4 different stat blocks that we can choose from. This is going to make min-maxers scream in anguish, but I don't hate it. It's a departure from what you usually see with Dungeons and Dragons, but realistically, there aren't that many different spreads that people choose when they're trying to actually use point buy to make a realistic character in Dungeons and Dragons. So I can't object to it that much in theory, but in practice, if all that ends up coming from it is basically the statistics, well, I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what these surprises are to know what's gonna happen, but this seems like an arbitrary limitation on the game. I'm not sure why you would tie the attributes to these origins. I mean, I kind of get it. It's replicating the starting stats of the various classes in Dark Souls, but it seems unnecessarily restrictive. Rather than doing this, allow for a normal point-buy system, and then have the class that you choose, or the origin, provide modifications to it. So let's say that instead of having a 27 point-buy system, you use just 20 points. And then you have both your origin and your class provide a small bonus to a couple of the different statistics. This allows you to preserve the customization while still keeping the idea of your origin and your class defining you that you get from Dark Souls. I've talked longer than they've written about origin, so let's move on. Once you've established your origin, you select one of the 10 iconic Dark Souls character classes. The Knight. Wide range of powerful abilities. So they don't actually give us any information about it. They just say, here, you can play as a knight. You get powerful abilities. Don't know what they do. Okay, so the Mercenary is a dual wielder. Makes sense. We have an Assassin. Strike first, strike last. So we have the Rogue here. Warrior is the Berserker, the Barbarian. Thief is another rogue, but focusing more on the stealth aspect than the assassination side. So actually, that brings up an interesting question. Let's go back to the Assassin. It doesn't mention anything about the assassin being magical. So let's take a look here. We've got the picture pulled up. They don't seem to have mentioned the assassin's magical abilities that they carry as a class within Dark Souls. I could be wrong here. I don't think I am, but I'm pretty sure that the assassin started with some minor magical ability. I think it was the one that makes you quiet, but they seem not to be making any reference to that. So maybe the assassin in this version of Dark Souls won't actually have magical abilities. I guess we'll find out. But unfortunately, there's not much information there. Anyway, back down. We've got a Herald. Herald is your cleric, capable of using magic as well as the martial. Okay, so this could be either the cleric or the paladin equivalent. My guess is it's going to be the cleric equivalent, but oh no. Of course not. The cleric is the cleric equivalent. So the herald is the paladin, the cleric is the cleric. We got the sorcerer, pyromancer. All right, the deprived. Huh. Okay. So again, they've given us all of this, but really, all that they've actually gone through here is writing up what the various classes are from the game. There's no information here about what they actually do. There's a couple little bits that kind of equate them to what you would expect from a specific Dungeons and Dragons class, except for the Deprived. I'm assuming it starts with nothing, and who knows where it goes from there. But this is why I held off on making a video about this post, because there's just so little information here. It's really just a list of classes. Let's hope that the rest of this has some better information. On to the next post. Next up, and this is the one that I've been waiting for, items, weapons, and armor. As you recall, in my previous video, I talked about how armor and weapons are how you really customize out your character, and that's how I would have handled doing a Dark Souls game, rather than using strict class progressions allowing items to define abilities. And spoilers, it seems like they're kind of doing that. So let's dive into it. Customization, here we go. Standard 5e allows you to customize your character with a choice of subclasses, but that didn't feel like Dark Souls. So instead, customization comes from your choice of equipment. Yes, that is absolutely the way that it should be done. Dark Souls is about your gear. Well, okay, it's about your personal skill, but we can't replicate Twitch reflexes in a dice rolling game. So what we have here is a good equivalent of building out your character with the gear that you want. Fantastic. And nearly every suit of armor, sword, halberd, blah, blah, blah is in there in an items chapter long enough to be its own book. I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. I'm so glad that they didn't do that. The trend of splitting out the stuff that is needed for the core experience of the game into multiple books needs to die. The Dungeons and Dragons idea of having the player's handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual all separated is a terrible thing. Good for their bottom line, I guess, because you have to buy 3 books in order to fully experience the game, but it's terrible for the consumer. Your stuff can fit in 1 book. It might be a big book, but that might just teach you to edit. So please start fitting your games in 1 book. So now we have an example of a piece of armor, the Katarina armor, one of the best for Onion Bro. And here we see that the armor itself carries a special effect. While wearing the Katarina armor, you suffer a -1 to your charisma, but you gain advantage on all strength saving throws. What? So yeah, okay, gain advantage on all strength saving throws, that's great, but a -1 to charisma? -1 to charisma when you're wearing the armor of one of the most popular characters in Dark Souls? They should give you a bonus to charisma for wearing this, come on! Anyway, they have an AC, of course, because it's armor, and a strength requirement. Obviously, that ties into what's going on in the game, where you have to have minimum statistics in order to use a piece of gear. But in the game, it relies on strength, dexterity, intelligence, faith, various statistics based on the equipment that you're using. I don't think that's the case here. I think the only requirement, at least from what we've seen and what they talk about, is going to be strength. Maybe there will be one-off exceptions here and there, but it doesn't seem like that's the direction they're going. Everything is just based off of strength, which I guess will make strength more important than it is in base D&D, so maybe that's good. We'll see. And cost 1,800 souls. That is dirt cheap. Nice. All right, so don't need to worry about your class when choosing your loadout. Tripped out no proficiencies. Oh, no proficiencies. So no proficiency bonus. So that's one of the main things that comes from leveling up in D&D 5e. So no more proficiency bonus. Any character can use any combinations of armor, weapons, and rings as long as they meet them. Yeah, there it is. The minimum strength value required to use them. So in order to use a rapier, you're going to need a minimum strength, and it's not going to care about your dexterity whatsoever. Huh. I mean, maybe this is just for the purpose of these example items, but if that's the route that they actually go, that is very concerning. Want to be a pyromancer in dragon scale armor wielding a katana? No problem. Alright, so now we've got the Lothric Knight Sword. We've got Strength 12, 1d12 piercing damage, properties reach, and yes, this is what they needed to do. Special abilities tied to your weapons. This is what's allowing you for your customization. You spend 1 position to push an enemy back 5 feet after a successful attack. That's kind of boring. Actually, let's go take a look at this armor again. There's nothing in it about an armor slot. So when you put on the Katarina armor, are you effectively wearing the entire suit? You're not going to be able to wear Katarina chest with different arms and legs. So if so, Then that brings us to having your main hand, your offhand, armor, and then between 2 and 4 rings, depending on what game that they're basing those numbers off of. If each thing has, at most, 1 special effect, that gives us 7 special abilities that you'll gain from your gear. I guess that's more than you would get with a subclass, but if they are all of the level of spend 1 position to push an enemy back 5 feet after a successful attack, that's a bit lackluster. All right, well, let's keep going. Let's see what else there is. 1d12 piercing. That's not bad. Oh, actually, I didn't notice that before. 1d12 piercing on the basic straight sword. Comparing this to 5e, where you would have 1d8 damage on a long sword, that's a significant jump in damage. I guess that means that position pools are going to be significantly higher than health pools. Obviously, we don't know that. This is just a guesstimate on my part. But based on the damage being increased from what is the base, I'm thinking that that does mean that there's going to be a higher position total on average than you would see for HP. Makes sense, this is going to be used for special abilities as well as your health, but that's just an interesting supposition from this. Could be completely wrong, we'll see. Alright, skills, that's not all. Just as wielding certain weapons guarantee new skills, so do the tabletop role-playing game. Alright, Spirit Tree Crest Shield. Special ability, okay. So we've got AC plus 2 requires 13 strength, and when using the Spirit Tree Crest Shield once per short rest, you may spend 2 position to reduce the lightning damage suffered from 1 attack by half. Once per short rest, you can reduce your health pool by 2 to prevent half of the lightning damage on an attack. That seems incredibly minor. So basically you're cutting the damage in half and taking half plus 2 because you had to pay 2 position in order to use this ability. So at what point does that actually become worth it? I mean, yes, technically speaking, once it's more than 6 damage, you are technically getting a gain of health. So you take 6 lightning damage, you use this ability, spending 2, you reduce it to half, so that's 3, so you only take 5. So you've reduced the damage by 1. That still feels relatively minor. Until you're getting up into double digits of damage from a single hit, which, again, maybe that matters because of damages being increased, as we saw with the sword, but still, that doesn't feel terribly impressive. I mean, compare it to the Katarina armor. The Katarina armor special ability just straight up gave you advantage on all strength saving throws, which, now that I am thinking about it, is not a very common saving throw. I hope that this trend of minor bonuses doesn't continue for all the items. I'm hoping that these are meant to be like intro items to the game, where they are a little less powered, which disappoints me greatly with the Katarina armor, but still, I guess we'll find out. Anything else in this post? Skills don't come for free, you'll need to spend position to make use of them. How you dress will be a vital element of preparing your character for battle. Yes, there we go. Fashion Souls is alive and well, especially since the bonuses seem to be fairly minor. I am actually intrigued. I am intrigued by this. I said from the beginning, from that first video, that I wanted gear-based customization, and it seems like they're delivering that. I just really, really hope that they're doing it well, as I am a little bit concerned right now. But we'll find out, I suppose. Closing this off, let's go take a look at some highlights from that Fireside Chat video.
Most of the classes have a fairly set path progression, and you customize through armor choices, weapon choices, shield, rings, like that. The Deprived, you do get the option to pick from all the other classes' abilities, but obviously you start with a club and nothing else.
All right, I'm always going to be a Deprived. Classes, as I surmised, is going to be a fairly straight progression, with then gear allowing them to customize. But Deprived being able to pick and choose abilities, that is actually a nice representation of Deprived being used to min-max out characters in the game. So, all right, that's interesting. You have my interest with that decision.
Pretty much every weapon, set of armor, shield, and most of the magic rings written up for use in this game. So it is a beast of a chapter. It's over, I think it's over 100 pages or close to. Certainly was in manuscript.
Good God, 100 pages of items? That's going to be A nightmare to go through. Oh gosh. We are definitely going to need some resources in order to catalog those items.
What do you reckon the coolest armor is in the game?
Onion Knight.
Excuse me? Onion Knight's your favorite? Why you do my boy dirty then? Minus to charisma? Come on.
Is there a scenario in the book, says Simon?
No, there isn't an initial kind of kickoff adventure in the book.
Okay, so this is something that a lot of games can learn from, and that is including a scenario in your core book. It seems like it's superfluous pages. It seems like it's just taking up space. But a quick start or an example scenario helps to get people in the mindset of running that particular game. Yes, this is based on 5e. Everybody knows how to run 5e, but there is a special tone with Dark Souls. And granted, a lot of the people who are going to run this game are going to be familiar with Dark Souls, but it helps to have that example to set the tone, set what a player should be expecting when they are running one of these games. We literally have 3 games that you could have just taken a scenario from. You literally could have just turned Dark Souls 3 into an adventure. Maybe just do it in through the graveyard, through Vort, and you'll have a decent introduction to the game. Release that for free alongside it with a couple pre-gen characters, and you have a way to build interest in your game and to provide an example of what formatting an adventure for this looks like. Anyway, that's my rant.
Warrior class, the northern kind of version of that does have a very, it's basically Rage, but a little bit of a tweak.
Basically Rage, but with a little bit of a tweak. That's basically what we've seen from this entire thing. It's basically this, but with a little bit of a tweak. Position is basically health, but with a little bit of a tweak. Hard to get excited about that.
Encumbrance is quite a big thing here. We've simplified that system out. It's not measuring weights anymore. You've got slots, so it's quite video gaming. And that's how you pick your class.
All right, so that basically confirms that we're going to have slots instead of encumbrance or anything. We'll see what slots we get. So we're just going to get a couple different abilities. So are we going to have people walking around with quivers full of swords in order to be able to drop their current weapon, draw a new one in order to use its once per short rest ability? I have a feeling that if they have a lot of abilities that are tied to short rests, long rests, it's going to result in people carrying around a lot of different equipment. Unless there's some kind of attunement mechanic where you need to, say, decide your equipment during a short rest or a long rest, in which case, come on, really? If I'm walking along and I find a cool sword that's basically the same as my sword but has a different ability, I'm going to need to take a short rest in order to swap it out. But then meanwhile, am I just going to be able to have unlimited short rest abilities by constantly swapping them out through combat? I don't know. I feel like one way is going to make dual wielding extremely effective and probably actually make the game more fun, so I don't really think that it's that big of a problem. It's just going to hurt balance.
The focus is very much on creating interesting, authentically weird Dark Souls NPCs. So there's lots of tables for building those, of the kind of quests they give you, the weird quirks they have.
Huh. Okay. So we're not... I'm sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. They're going to give us a table that we use to create NPCs and quests. All right. I'm extremely intrigued by that. Having any kind of generation system for NPCs or storylines within your game is a great thing. So if they actually do that well, that has a potential to be very valuable, even if you're not playing a Dark Souls game. Whatever mechanics they have there could be something that could be used for another game, even playing Dark Souls in a different system that might be more appropriate from 5e. And these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about when I say this may be a game that's worth following, even if you don't intend to play it with 5e. If this is done right, this is something that has huge potential to be reusable for other games or systems. I'm intrigued by this. I hope it turns out to be something good. We've seen games that have great random generation mechanics, or even planned generation mechanics, like, say, the way that you build out your vampires or the conspiramid within Night's Black Agents. And if they can do something similar to that, similar guidelines on how to structure and create NPCs in the Dark Souls style, that's a very valuable tool. Yes, it's something that you could do on your own without it, But having some kind of written guidelines and focus prompts really does help people. So good on them if this comes out well. See, I'm not only critical.
The core book is solely focused, bar a couple of monsters, a couple of iconic monsters and stuff like that on the third game.
Oh, I just come off of this high and we go to an immediate low. You have one game to base this off of and you choose Dark Souls 3? I like Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 I enjoy playing. I think it has very fluid and smooth gameplay. The enemies are cool, yes, but are they just choosing this because it's the most recent Dark Souls, so it's the one that people are familiar with and they're choosing to capitalize on that? Probably. But then you look at the mechanics that they've already done. Look at the magic system that they created. The magic system of attunement slots and then spells having a number of uses doesn't exist in Dark Souls 3. So why are they basing the storyline, the characters, the monsters on Dark Souls 3? Start with Dark Souls 1. That's what your magic is based off of. If you wanted to base everything off of Dark Souls 3, then why aren't you using the flower power mechanic?
You are unlikely to die quite as often as you are in the game for the I think fairly logical reason that actually it's quite boring to die over and over again in the same bit in an RPG.
Wait a minute. Haven't they been playing up how easy it is to die, how you're going to die in this game? I mean, I get where he's coming from. You don't want to be dying in one hit in every fight, but I thought they were tuning this to actually be Dark Souls hard. I mean, you have the mechanics of half your party dies, everybody dies. So what's going on there? I understand the idea of not wanting people to have to repeat the same encounters over and over and over again in a role-playing game. Yes, that would get boring. But that's the core of Dark Souls. Either scale back the difficulty, in which case, why are you having these punishing mechanics like half dead, reset, or really steer into it and actually embrace the idea of having to go through these encounters again and again and find a way to make it more interesting.
What happens when you die is you wake up next to a bonfire. You can kind of go off and explore on your own if the party is still engaged in the battle. You can't go back and join. Well, actually, no, I did say you could in the book. You can, but the monster you're fighting immediately goes back up to full health. So
whoa, the monster goes back to full health if you go to rejoin the battle. Okay, that makes sense. That's definitely a balancing mechanic that makes sense. But you can also go wandering about on your own while your party is still fighting the boss. That sounds like a logistical nightmare. So in that situation, you have your person out there running around in the world, going into places that the party hasn't. Meanwhile, the party is currently in combat rounds. So then are you expected to translate all movement throughout the world into combat round timing? Oh my god, that's going to be a nightmare. And considering how long a combat takes, even if you have 10 additional rounds of combat, which is a lot, after somebody's died, that's only 1 minute? How much can this character who's respawned back at the bonfire really accomplish in 1 minute? Would they even be able to make it back to the boss fight in 1 minute?
Either way, you make a wisdom save. And if you fail, you lose a part of yourself. You are gradually hollowed out.
Great. I want to see the hollowing mechanic. That's a little bit of a simplistic way of doing it, but it makes sense. I'm glad that they're doing something.
If half the party dies, then you all immediately basically wake up at the bonfire, irrespective of where you
are. Okay. Irrespective of where you are. So if you are the person who died early in the fight, and then you go off and start exploring, and then the remaining half of the party dies, you get pulled back to the bonfire. Does that count as another death? Or is this just, all right, the bonfire magically pulls everybody together? For that matter, the other half that was in the combat, do they get a death? They didn't technically die, they're just being forced to go back to the bonfire. So if the rest of the people in the combat would get a death, then it would make sense for the person who was out exploring to get a death as well, because they're doing the same thing, getting pulled back to the bonfire. But then in that case, you're actually getting 2 deaths for that. I'm hoping that this is something that's going to be clarified in the rulebook, because it seems like a major piece that could happen here. That's something that people will have questions on. Does this reset back to the bonfire at half death count as a death for the people who were not dead? Holy run-on sentence, Batman. That one sentence puts me even more in concern for this mechanic, but we'll see. When the final book comes out, we'll take a look at it and we'll see how it works. I'm not hopeful, but I've been wrong before. Alright, so that's the major points from the Fireside Chat. There's some good information here, and if you want to check out the full thing, you'll see a link for it in the description. I skipped over a lot of the fluff talk. If you want to go hear about his opinions on cows in gaming, by all means, go ahead and check out the full video. I would recommend watching it on 1.5% speed, but that's just me. All in all, I have reservations about where things are going, but there are also pieces that I feel could actually be useful. The way that they're handling gear seems interesting. I'll just want to see what kind of restrictions they put in place for it. And of course, I want to see what they have with their tools for campaign and NPC generation. We'll see how all that ends up. Anyway, thanks for coming around. I am still interested to see where this goes. Maybe they'll put out some more preview posts. Maybe they won't. We'll see. Maybe you'll hear from me again on this now, or maybe when it eventually reaches me in the States here. As I have a feeling I'm going to end up doing another video on this, at least one talking about the game, how it actually ends up, and comparing it to some other games that might be more appropriate to run a Dark Souls game in. We'll see. We'll see how the game actually ends up. Maybe it's perfect. Maybe it could use those tweaks. Make sure that you've subscribed, though, so that when that eventually comes out, you'll be notified and able to return to see my joyous personality once more. Anyway, I hear my baby stirring in the other room, so I'm going to call it here. Thanks for coming in, folks. I hope you had a good time. And remember, there's gaming outside the Forgotten Realms.